Okay, welcome to Messaging That Matters. This course is going to teach you a lot of things, but at the end of the day, what we all want is to get better fit customers through our pipeline faster so we can grow our business together. And that is what we're all about. There's a lot of different things that go into that. It's a big orchestration. Messaging is a key part of that. So we're going to unpack a lot of that today. But first things first is, hi, I'm Maya. Nice to meet you. And I am a product marketer. I'm also a mom. I like to think of myself as a challenger of ideas and a questioner. I'm also a singer. I'm a teammate. I'm a supporter of others. I like to build things. I'm also a friend and a human. And I go through all of that because it's important for us to understand that we are very multidimensional humans. I am, you are, your customers are, so is every other human on the planet. And so it's our job to develop messaging that appeals to humans in their full glory of multidimensionalness. And that is what we'll talk about today. Especially if you've been in the product marketing mini degree course, even if you've been in the brand marketing degree course, you have your positioning. You should be coming to this course with an idea and a solid understanding of who you are, why you are what you are, and who you're for, and what your value is. And then we're going to take that and just like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, we're going to turn that into a really unique expression of value that you're going to use to go out into the world and talk about your product and get those best fit customers through your pipeline. So the journey of this course is a long one, but very thorough. And the intention is for you to come out the other side knowing how to understand the inputs for messaging, understand how to apply them and create messaging, and then how to go out and validate that messaging and enable other teams to use it. The first lesson will be the what and the why. What is messaging? Why do we need it? What is it not? An introduction to the many different layers and the dimensions of messaging, and a mindset check to say, how do we want to mentally approach the challenge of developing messaging? And we'll come back to that mindset check throughout the course. The second lesson is a deeper dive into those dimensions or those layers. And I call that lesson Unlocking the Layers because it's important for you to understand all of them so that you can use them to like a toolkit to really unlock how you're going to develop your messaging. And the layers that we'll talk about is the business need, your kind of flavor of influence in terms of how you connect with the humans on the other side of the screen. What is your promise to your customers? How are you going to be relevant to them? How do you deliver what you promise to them? And also the insights that you bring in terms of your data and your research. The third lesson will actually be a messaging sprint, and so I'll be joined by Diego, who is a product manager here at CXL. We'll be actually going through live messaging development and a process that I call message relevancy mapping for a new product at CXL called Playbooks. And so we'll start with the positioning outputs. We'll go through all of the different layers. We'll do the messaging sprint and map the relevant messages into a canvas together. And then we'll look in the mirror to say how reflective of it is, how reflective of the current product value is the messaging that we've created together. And then we'll move into lesson 4, which is create and validate. So we'll unpack the canvas that we've just created in terms of the messaging canvas. And we'll go through the differences between the value proposition, the benefits, the pain points, all of those kind of jargony words that you hear thrown around in terms of messaging. We'll unpack all that together. And then finally, the fifth and the final lesson is how to enable others to use this messaging and to turn it into the magic that it needs to be and to connect with your audiences. So why enablement matters, who are your internal stakeholders for messaging, how to enable them, how to measure and make sure that that enablement is effective, and then how to measure and understand the efficacy of your actual messaging in the market. And that is a lot. We're going to take it one course at a time, one lesson at a time, and we're going to start with lesson 1, which is the what and the why. So, lesson 1, what is messaging? Why do we need it? The agenda for this particular lesson is what messaging is not. We'll start with that. When does it happen within your kind of organizational cadence? What is messaging exactly? Why is it needed? An introduction to all of those different layers and dimensions that I've been talking about in that mindset check. So let's get started. So let's start by talking about what messaging is not. Messaging is often conflated with many of the other things that product marketers do, like positioning. Sometimes it's even conflated with copy, which is not the same. And let's start by talking about what it's not so that we can really more deeply understand what it is. It's definitely not positioning, because you have to know and really agree upon who you are before you can tell your customers about yourself. So that process of defining and agreeing as an organization upon who you are, that's strategy work, and that is positioning. And that has to happen before you can develop the messaging that communicates to your customers who you are. So messaging is not positioning. Positioning comes first. Positioning is a prerequisite. So from your positioning work, you should be coming to the table about to develop messaging with a really solid understanding of a few critical things. And those things are what your product is and what space it plays in. What is it and what category? How do customers understand and reference it? What is the narrative around your product and your company? What is that story that inspires the customer and communicates and drives home the why? Who is your best fit customer? Who are your target audiences? Also sometimes referred to as your ICP, which is your intended company profile. And how do you want to be perceived within the competitive landscape? And also, what are your product's unique attributes and values? From your positioning work, you should have a solid understanding of these things. Sometimes it's a document, sometimes it's, bits and pieces of information you can pull from different parts of the organization. Sometimes it's a really long strategy document that's 15 or more pages. So it really all depends on what format this information is coming to you. If you're a product marketer, hopefully you've been a really big part, if not the leader, of developing this positioning work. Something else that messaging is not copy. So you might be thinking, why can't we just take all these outputs from positioning and throw them on our website? We know who we are, we know what kind of product we've built for whom and why it's valuable. We might even have a list of our unique value propositions. Let's just slap them on our website and on our blog and let's go. It's not that easy because there needs to be some layers of translation that an expert copywriter will help you do. A product marketer should be a writer, but not necessarily a copywriter. And if you work with a great marketing team and a great copywriter, you know that they will be able to bring your messaging to life. They will be able to breathe in the magic to that messaging to make it even more relevant, even more credible, and even more emotionally engaging to your audiences. As a product marketer, you're highly strategic, you're cross-functional, you're the orchestra conductor conducting all of the go-to-market motions in your organization, and that is a big job. So play to your strengths and allow yourself to work with and collaborate with your marketing team and your expert copywriters who are the real experts in bringing words to life. Your words should be the architecture by which they create the magic that a customer sees. Sometimes a product marketer will write copy and will write content. That's usually at an earlier stage growth company, maybe a smaller or more bootstrapped company. So it's not black and white. It's not like marketers can't write copy. But if you have access to an excellent copywriter and an excellent marketing team to help you do that, by all means, take advantage of that. They are your co-conspirators and co-collaborators in making your messaging as impactful as it can be. Messaging is also not your features. And I say this because it's also easy to say, well, we also know through our positioning work that we have these amazing features and the product is capable of these awesome things. So let's put that on the homepage. Let's slap that onto a blog. But without the context of the customer understanding why it's important and what those features help them to accomplish, it doesn't mean anything, and we can do so much better. And that's what I feel very strongly about that, is that whenever I see features listed on any kind of customer-facing material, if it's not within the context of what it helps that customer accomplish, the first thing that I think is we can do better. And Seth Godin says it well, people don't buy products, they buy relations, they buy stories, they buy magic. They buy all of the context in the story around the product, and the product is just the last thing that they have to make sure meets their expectations and will provide the functionality that they expect from it. But they don't buy the product. They buy the reason for the product. So we'll get into a lot more of that later. So what is messaging? We still haven't gotten there. We will. And when does it happen? We'll start with a little bit of the when it happens within your overall organizational cadence, and then we'll come around to what I define messaging to be. And so we'll start with, when does it happen? In the grand scheme of how your business operates, when does messaging happen? Messaging can't happen without first a few really important things within your company. First really important thing that has to happen is your company has to understand why it exists. What is your company's mission, your vision, or your company's story, sometimes called your strategic narrative, that is the highest level context for what you do and why you do it. It's your ultimate why, the big why. Sometimes product marketing contributes to that, and that's fantastic when that happens because they can help steward it down and cascade it down through the rest of the organization. But really, it should be led and owned by your CEO and by your leadership team. And then what happens is that strategy is taken, that strategy and story is taken and distilled into what you sell, in what space, in what category. Are you trying to create a new one? Are you trying to pursue a subsection of an existing category? Who are you selling this product to, and why are you selling it to them? So it's a little bit more in-depth, a distillation of what that company mission, vision, and story is. And that's your positioning. And that is real strategy work as well. And that is typically what a product marketing manager will own, if not be very involved in. And that's great because that positioning work is what directly informs messaging. So you have the story, you have the strategy, now you have to figure out how to express that to your market. And that's when messaging happens. So now you understand a little bit about what messaging is not and when it happens within your overall organizational cadence. And here is how I think of messaging. I think of messaging as the articulation of what you promise to your customer, how you deliver that promise, and why it's so important to them across the complete customer journey. And we will talk a little bit more about that because it's quite important. Different customers are all humans. Different humans have different needs at different times along the different phases of the customer life cycle or journey, whatever you'd like to call that, from when they first become aware of your product to when they purchase and then expand in their value. And so across that entire life cycle, messaging is the articulation of what you promise, how you deliver it, why it's important. It commonly is seen, or you may have heard a lot of kind of buzzwords around, well, what is the output of messaging? What does it actually look like? What is the physical thing of messaging? You've probably heard of messaging frameworks or value props, maybe outcome pillars, value points, proof points, a lot of different things. We'll unpack all that in lessons 3 and 4 today. But, you know, I feel you, right? Like if you Google, show me a messaging framework, which is a very commonly Googled thing apparently, you will see 1,000,001 different frameworks. And a framework to me implies some kind of like one size fits all kind of approach. And messaging is anything but that. Yes, you need a way to organize your messaging. But it all depends on the different layers and dimensions of your messaging that we will get to in the next lesson. I personally, and in my experience, I've treated messaging more like a canvas that you develop. It's the space in which you have to paint, and you can paint with any variety of colors and different things and different textures, and you can paint any number of things on your canvas. And that is how you express the multidimensional layers of messaging. And so you'll see throughout the rest of the course that I will refer to my messaging canvas. Here is a little sneak peek of what my personal messaging canvas is, which you'll have access to after this course as well. I think messaging is living and breathing. It should be adaptable yet very strong, and obviously made up of so many different layers and dimensions. This is just a little bit about my messaging canvas. Sometimes it actually lives as a spreadsheet. I've seen other messaging canvases live as spreadsheets or as frameworks or as Miro boards, really anything. It's whatever works for you and for your team and for your company in terms of how you organize your messaging. And hopefully by the end of this course, you'll have a better idea of what that might look like. And so we will talk about what are those essential components of how you organize your messaging for maximum impact here. But before we do that, let's go into why messaging, a little bit about the big why. Why is messaging important? Why do we need messaging? After all, as we've just talked about, through positioning, we come away with what we are, for whom, and why. The temptation to slap that directly onto your webpage is strong. I get it. Avoid the temptation. Your positioning assumes that there is a need. After all, that's why you've built what product that your team has built. You've built it to fill a need that your target market has. They have a need, you're going to fulfill that need, and they're going to pay you to do it, right? That's how it works. It's not that easy because at best, your market might already be aware of the need, but they still need convincing that it's urgent, it's important, and that you're the best one to fill it. But in reality, your message is probably already out there in the market to some degree, and customers and people and humans already have stories and thoughts and judgments about your product. And it may not be the same thoughts and stories and judgments that you want them to be making about your product. Our tendencies as humans, as this picture illustrates, is toward our own perception biases. We think our product is so awesome. We think if we just get the word out, other people will think the same thing. They will catch on to our enthusiasm because it is so great. And we know that. Why don't other people? But that's, doesn't always work out that way. I would say 99% of the time doesn't work out that way because people are relatively selfish and they don't want to give you the time of day unless what they're hearing about is immediately relevant to what they're going through. So it is our job to connect the dots for these customers, all the way from realizing the need in the first place through to purchase and beyond. This big need that they have to realize that needs to be filled, it's actually many different needs and many different levels and layers of needs. After all, what we've been talking about is how human we are. We're human beings, we're complex, we're a little bit selfish. Your job as a product marketer is to craft the messaging that appeals to the various different levels and kinds of human needs at different times. Of course, all aligned to a common narrative and organizational strategy. But it all starts with appealing to those different human needs. Let's talk about what those are. Some very, very smart people at Harvard Business Review have mapped B2B buying needs against a hierarchy of needs similar to Maslow's hierarchy. Up at the top, a B2B buyer needs to be inspired. They need to be inspired to transform, and that is the realization of their need that we've been talking about. That's a little bit of the urgency and the importance. Then they have individual needs. What's in it for me as a person? Sure, I may be purchasing and buying for my business, but I'm still a person. I'm an IT manager. I'm a content marketer. I'm a blah, blah, blah. And what's in it for me? Am I going to have reduced frustration and anxiety from this? Is it going to help me enhance my reputation and advance my career? Then, of course, there are business level needs. Actually, what's in it for my business? Does this product do the job that I just need it to do, plain and simple? Is it going to save me time? Is it going to help me be more efficient? Is it going to help me reduce risk? And all of those kind of efficiency, time savings, and risk reduction, those are your classic kind of value drivers in a B2B context. And those will keep showing up over and over and over again. Then, of course, going down the hierarchy, you have functional needs. And so a B2B buyer will think, well, okay, sure, I'm inspired by this product and I can see that it's going to work for me as a human. I can also see that it's going to do what I need it to do for my business. But does it work like I expect it to work? I expect it to lower costs. I expect it to be a super quality product. I expect to be able to grow and scale with it over time. Does it meet those expectations? And then at the very bottom is table stakes. Does it meet my absolute minimum requirements as a B2B buyer? Is it usable? Can I use it? Can my team use it? Does it meet my legal and compliance requirements? And that is at the very bottom of the hierarchy because that is just table stakes and expected today. So we're going to come back to that B2B hierarchy of buying needs because it's a great way to think about appealing to the human. But first, I really want to talk about the customer journey with you because you have to understand the journey that your customers are going through when interacting with your product and your brand and your company. Because messaging plays a huge role in advancing that customer through the journey. And that's what we all want at the end of the day, get better fit customers through that journey, through that pipeline faster. And appealing to the human and those different needs that they might have from that hierarchy at different times in the customer journey. But more than messaging playing a huge role in advancing customers through the customer journey is that the customer journey itself and your messaging in particular is the primary interface through which the customer experiences value. It's the interface through which the customer experiences who you are, who your brand is, what you stand for, and what your value is. If you have inconsistent or irrelevant messaging, that can do huge damage to your customer's experience because they're hearing different things from different channels at different points in the journey, and it's confusing. And more than confusing, it's just a lost opportunity to have given them a really seamless experience that advances and progresses them through the journey faster. So again, another reason why you need spot-on messaging and why you need to enable your teams who are building these journeys to really deliver that messaging to your customers. I think it's worth going through what the different steps of the journey are for those of you who maybe haven't seen it in this way. And this customer journey in particular is based off of the B2B SaaS model, which is more and more common today, especially as product marketers. Many of us probably work in a B2B SaaS function. And so it's worth going through. Let's zoom in and go through what these phases of the journey, what they're really all about. So the customer journey starts with customers realizing that they have a need. They're becoming aware of the need, and it's your job to do that. That's audience development work. It's when their commitment is very low because they may not even be aware of the need. So how can you break through the noise in the awareness phase of their journey to start to bring them into your world? When you bring them into your world, that means they're starting to consider you as a potential solution. And they're starting to say, well, could this product work for me? Do I really need it? Their commitment is growing. So they're asking themselves at this point in the journey, is this product right for me as an individual? Is it right for my business? And that's a little bit of a callback to that hierarchy of needs, if you remember. Those folks who are caring about those personal needs, those individual needs. Can I use it? Does it work for me as an individual? Also about my business. Does it work for my business? Once they're through that consideration phase, maybe hopefully the answer is yes, right? And you've given them the messaging and the delivery that the answer is yes. It is right for them as an individual. It is right for their business. Moving into the kind of close or purchase phase of the customer journey where commitment is high. They've spent a lot of time researching, considering. They've probably been on demo calls, discovery calls with your sales team. If you have a strong kind of sales-led motion, maybe they've been through a trial at this point. So their commitment is pretty high. Maybe they've even provided a credit card number to you as part of the trial experience. Can you prove at this point that you can deliver what you've promised? And can you call back to the initial inspiration and why they realized this need in the first place to really close the deal? You close the deal, but the journey's not over because especially in software, commitment can be really fleeting. If you purchase a subscription for a software solution, but you can't actually use it as well as you thought you could use it, and you're not getting the kind of value that you thought you could from it. So in the retention phase of the customer journey, this is about activating value and activating value before customers decide that they're going to leave you, which is churning. All right, let's say that the customer has now become aware of the need. They've considered their options and they've chosen you and they've activated value and they are on an amazing path with you as their partner. Their commitment is ongoing and continuous, but can you maintain that commitment with them? Can you expand their value and get them to purchase higher value solutions that are in addition to what they've already purchased? Can you get them to advocate for you and kind of help you propel the market and the industry forward in terms of best practices? So throughout this entire customer journey, messaging should be different at different points because humans have different needs at different points in this journey. And so that's what we'll continue to talk about. So it's also worth noting here that the customer journey we just talked very in depth about is just a different, broader version of the marketing funnel that you may already be aware of. The top of the funnel is getting your market to become aware of their need and bought into your why. Mid-funnel is that consideration phase. Will it work for me? Will it work for my business? And into that trial and conversion phase. Does it really deliver on the expectations I have of this product? And then, of course, especially in B2B SaaS, you have activation and retention and advocacy beyond that. But just in terms of this marketing funnel, it's also really helpful to think about a couple of different lenses here. One lens is the hierarchy of needs that we talked about. What kind of different human needs do humans have at different times? And also what kinds of messaging lenses are going to best communicate those needs to those customers. So I find it really interesting to overlay those needs from the hierarchy as well as the different kind of messaging lenses. And you've probably heard about a lot of these messaging lenses, a strategic narrative, persona messaging, vertical messaging, solution messaging, product messaging. What's the difference between all of them? Those are all the layers that we're going to get into in lesson 2. But I think for now, it's really interesting to kind of look at the overlay of the customer journey in terms of what kind of needs do customers have at different points in the journey and what kinds of messaging is going to help you to really hone in on that need and deliver them the kind of message they need at that time. Especially if we start at the top of the funnel, we have their customers becoming aware of the need and aware of the solution and your why. You're really appealing to their inspirational needs as a human. This is your story. How are you going to transform the way that they work? This is your strategic narrative. Mid-funnel, customers are asking, will this work for me as a human? Will this work for my business? You're really appealing to their individual needs. You're appealing to their business needs. And you're doing that with persona and vertical messaging, also some solution messaging sometimes in there as well. And then into the trial and conversion phase, customers are asking, does it deliver? Does it do what I expect it to do? And these are your functional needs that you're appealing to. And that's a lot of solution messaging. That's product messaging there. And then, of course, table stakes as well, which we will talk a little bit more about. So now it's interesting to note a few things about how these different human needs at different times and what kinds of messaging best speaks to them, how sometimes this kind of creates organic friction in your company, especially for those of you who are at like kind of mid-stage or larger companies, more mature B2B technology companies. There's often some friction between product marketing and sales because sales is talking to people at a different stage of the journey. Sales is talking to people deep into that consideration phase and that close and trial and convert stage of the journey. And those people have either already been inspired by your story to begin with, right? That's what you hope, that they've already been sold into that narrative and that the salesperson is really just helping them through the consideration and close section, or hopefully not, but they might just be really cynical and not want to talk about what they're inspired by and the story as well. But the point is that I see and have experienced a lot of kind of organic friction when product marketers especially say, this is the messaging and this is what you should move forward out into the world and talk about with customers. And salespeople say, well, no, that's not what my customers want to hear about. My customers want to hear about what features we have and how we deliver. And that's natural. That's a good friction. That's organic friction. You should lean into that because that's exactly what should be happening, because your marketing message at the top of funnel is different than your message for salespeople and for customer-facing people mid-funnel and more into that close and trial and convert stage of the journey. There's a time and a place for everything. So that brings us to layered messaging. And maybe you've heard this term. There's also the term that I've heard around town called matrixed messaging. Whatever you call it, layered messaging, matrix messaging, just messaging, whatever you call it, it's all about being like the duck. And I love the analogy of a duck who is swimming on the water, and they're underneath the water, their legs are just like pedaling like crazy, and they're doing so much work, and they're moving so fast and so hard. But above the water, they just look totally effortless. And so today and the next 4 lessons are all about being like the duck, because it's all about what happens underneath the water to develop all that messaging that's going to allow you to have that elegant, effortless, seamless experience with customers above water. And it's going to start by breaking down the layers, which we're going to do. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick couple checks. The first check, and we'll return to these checks throughout the course, is a potency check. There's some attributes about your messaging, about making it as relevant as it can be, making it as emotionally engaging as it can be. So in terms of relevancy, does it speak to them and their business and their niche and what they do? Is it emotionally engaging? Does it appeal to their individual human needs? Is your messaging credible? Are you seen as an expert in that field or that niche? And is it unique? Are you standing out amongst the competition? So these are the elements that are really going to make your messaging super potent, and that's what we'll come back to return to throughout this course. Of equal importance to understanding if your messaging is potent or not is your mindset that you bring to developing messaging. As everything we've just talked about in this lesson, as you can probably already tell, it's really challenging. It's not easy to develop and deliver and write compelling messaging that's super potent. So what does it take to really do that? And this is a mindset check that we'll come back to at different stages of the course, just to keep checking on how are we mentally approaching developing messaging. The first kind of mindset to have is to be a customer champion, to always understand what the human needs at what time, where they are in their journey, and what they need to hear. Also, to be resiliently open-minded. Part of developing messaging is admitting that you're wrong and killing all the stuff that you've spent so much time writing and developing, because that's what the iterative messaging development process is about, and we'll get there. Don't be afraid to kill your darlings off. Just see it as an opportunity to be resiliently open-minded and to try again, and you will probably learn something new along the way. Also, keeping it simple. Are you keeping the messaging as simple and straightforward as possible? Overly jargony messaging, no good. Overly lofty messaging, no good. Keep it simple and at the standard level that a 5th grader could understand. Are you bringing your data with you? As a product marketer, you are doing all kinds of research, you're pulling all kinds of insights, you're getting all kinds of feedback from your customers, from your market, from your internal teams. Bring that with you in terms of messaging development. That is your homework. And are you empowering others? Obviously, you should be empowering your customers because they should be using your product to transform and improve the way that they work, right? But are you empowering other people within your own organization to use your messaging? That's a lot about enablement, and we'll get to that in lesson 5. But these 5 mindset checks are something to just always be aware of to help you really mentally withstand the challenge of developing messaging. And as we move into that challenge, yes, I'm excited to do that with you throughout the rest of this course, and that leads us to lesson 2.